was over, you're dead. You, of all people.
Black Phone 2 is imagined as a darker, more psychologically intense continuation of the chilling story that first introduced audiences to a masked predator and a disconnected phone that was anything but silent. This sequel does not simply attempt to recreate the claustrophobic terror of the original. Instead, it expands the mythology, deepens the emotional trauma of its survivors, and asks a more unsettling question. What if evil does not end when the nightmare is over? What if it lingers, evolves, and waits? The story picks up years after the terrifying events that once confined a young victim to a soundproof basement where a dead phone carried the voices of those who came before him. Time has passed, but healing has not come easily. Trauma is not something that disappears with escape. It reshapes identity, distorts memory, and leaves cracks in even the strongest survivors. The sequel leans heavily into this psychological aftermath, exploring how survival itself can become a haunting. The central character, now older, carries both strength and fragility. On the surface, life has moved forward. School, responsibilities, attempts at normalcy. But beneath that calm exterior lies a persistent anxiety, a fear that something unfinished still exists. The black phone, once an impossible connection to the beyond, becomes symbolic of unresolved terror. Was it destroyed? Was it silenced? Or was it only waiting? The tone of this imagined sequel is colder, more atmospheric. Instead of focusing solely on physical captivity, the film shifts into psychological captivity. Nightmares begin to blur with reality. Strange phone rings echo in empty rooms. The sound of static becomes a trigger, stirring memories that refuse to fade. The film explores the unsettling idea that evil, once experienced, imprints itself onto those who survive it. Rumors within the story suggest that similar disappearances have begun occurring in nearby areas. At first, these incidents seem unrelated, isolated, but patterns emerge. Details mirror past horrors in subtle, chilling ways. The sequel does not rush into revealing whether a copycat killer exists or whether something more supernatural is unfolding. It allows doubt to simmer, forcing both characters and audience to question what is real. The returning presence of the masked figure, whether physical, symbolic, or something in between, becomes central to the tension. The mask itself evolves in appearance, reflecting fragmentation. Where once it represented a singular threat, now it feels layered, cracked, perhaps even inhabited by something beyond human malice. The film hints at the possibility that the original horror may have unlocked something darker than a single individual. One of the most compelling aspects of Black Phone 2 is its exploration of inherited trauma. Those who survived the first nightmare are connected not only by shared experience but by shared fear. Conversations are strained, protective instincts heightened. Family dynamics shift under the weight of unspoken memories. The film examines how survival bonds people together while simultaneously isolating them from those who cannot understand. As the story progresses, the black phone reappears, not necessarily in the same physical form, but as a phenomenon. A disconnected phone ringing in an abandoned building, a line that should be dead carrying faint whispers. The voices on the other end are no longer just past victims. They may be warnings, or they may be something else entirely. The sequel deepens the supernatural ambiguity, suggesting that the phone is less an object and more a conduit. Visually, the film embraces shadow and negative space. Dimly lit hallways, flickering lights, snow-covered streets under pale moonlight. The coldness of the environment mirrors the emotional detachment of its characters. Silence plays a major role again, broken only by the sudden, sharp ring of a phone that no one dares to answer. The sound design heightens every breath, every footstep, every moment of stillness. A new antagonist presence begins to take shape. Whether this figure is directly connected to the original terror or inspired by it remains unclear for much of the narrative. What is clear is that the methods are evolving. Psychological manipulation becomes as powerful as physical confinement. Victims are not just trapped in rooms. They are trapped in fear long before captivity begins. The The sequel also explores the idea of unfinished business. The spirits who once offered guidance may have their own motives. Their voices become more fragmented, less reassuring. Instead of clear instructions, they offer cryptic warnings. This shift introduces doubt. Can the voices still be trusted? Or has something corrupted the connection? Midway through the film, a chilling revelation reframes the original story. The horror was never entirely contained. Certain details were overlooked, certain secrets buried too quickly. The past was not fully understood. This revelation forces the protagonist to confront the possibility that survival was only the first chapter, not the conclusion. Relationships are tested as fear resurfaces. Loved ones who believe the nightmare was over must face the resurgence of danger. Tension rises as protective instincts clash with denial. Some refuse to believe history could repeat itself. Others feel the unmistakable pull of déjà vu. The film captures the frustration of trying to convince others of a threat that sounds impossible. The pacing builds steadily toward a confrontation that feels both inevitable and uncertain. Instead of relying solely on physical chase sequences, the climax focuses on choice. Will the protagonist answer the phone again? Will they confront the voice calling from the darkness? The black phone becomes a metaphor for facing fear, directly rather than running from it. When the confrontation finally unfolds, it is layered with ambiguity. The antagonist's identity may be revealed, but the nature of the evil remains open to interpretation. Is it a cycle of violence repeating through different faces? Is it a supernatural force feeding on fear? Or is it something born from trauma itself? The film resists offering a single explanation. The emotional resolution centers on empowerment rather than escape. Survival is no longer about fleeing. It is about confronting the source of terror head-on. The protagonist's growth is evident not in fearlessness, but in willingness to engage with fear. The phone may still ring, but its power weakens when answered with strength rather than panic. In the final scenes, the atmosphere shifts slightly. There is no triumphant sense of complete victory. Instead, there is cautious calm. The phone rests silent, but the audience is left questioning whether silence means safety. A subtle sound, perhaps distant static, lingers as a reminder that some connections are never fully severed. Thematically, Black Phone 2 explores how trauma echoes across time. It asks whether evil is an individual act or a lingering presence that survives through memory and fear. The black phone becomes a symbol of unfinished conversations, of voices that demand to be heard, of truths that refuse to stay buried. This imagined sequel deepens the psychological layers of the original story while expanding its mythology. It shifts the focus from captivity to consequence, from escape to confrontation. By blending grounded emotional drama with supernatural undertones, it creates a horror experience that feels intimate and unsettling, rather than overwhelming audiences with constant shocks. The film builds dread through atmosphere and character. It respects silence as much as sound, shadow as much as light. The fear is not just in what appears on screen, but in what lingers after it fades. Black Phone 2 ultimately becomes a meditation on resilience. It suggests that confronting darkness requires more than courage, it requires understanding. The voices of the past may guide, but the future depends on the choices of the living. And as the screen fades to black, the echo of a distant ring reminds viewers that some stories do not end when the line goes dead.